Welcome to online classes. I am Shilpa, lecturer in DCME, working at Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, GMR Polytechnic, Karimnagar. Subject introduction. That is, I am going to teach object-oriented programming through C++. Already you've gone through programming language like C, and also you learn ASTC. So here you are going to learn new concepts in the subject. Is having 6 units. In first unit, you are having principles of group. That is, in that you learn software crisis, evaluation, and basic concepts of groups. And introduction to C++ is second unit, and in that you learn about structure of C++ program and some program example programs, and of course functions and all those things. Third unit is C++ input-output operations. In that, we learn input-output operations. That is how we can give input to the program and how we can get the output from the program. And also formatted input-output functions. That is how we can change the format of input and as well as the output. That means here when we are printing something onto the screen, can we change the format or the appearance of the output. So we learn those things in formatted input output, and also using some manipulators we can change the appearance of the output, of course, and at the time of reading input we can take only the necessary input as input to the program using these manipulators. Those will be in third unit. And fourth unit, you are going to learn about constructors, destructors, and operator overloading. And in fifth chapter, you are going to learn derived classes and inheritance. That is mainly the aim of this unit is reusability. Can we use predefined functions in our program again and again or in other modules? So that is reusability concept will be covered in fifth chapter. The sixth chapter is templates. That is generic. It is used for generic programming. We can create class templates and function templates, so on. Those will be covered in sixth unit. Here, what is the main objective of this presentation of the lecture? On the completion of this presentation, you would be able to know software crisis, and of course what is the solution for the software crisis, and second one, limitations of procedure oriented languages, third one, evaluation of object oriented programming and features of object oriented languages, and of course the last one is applications of groups. We go through all these topics in our lecture. First we know what is software crisis and what is the solution of that, and what are the limitations of procedure oriented languages, and what is the evaluation of object oriented programming and features of object oriented languages and applications of OOPS we learn in this lecture. Okay, before going to actual lecture, what are the subjects, or do you want any prerequisites to learn this particular subject? Already you've gone through the programming language C in your second semester. In that you learn about all the basic concepts of programming languages, that is variables, constants, keywords, syntaxes, branching and looping statements, arrays, functions, etc. Of course, about files, how to access the content of the file to your program and how you can send the content to a particular file. All those are covered in our C language. So here, mainly when we are going to learn this C++, you need to know the basic syntaxes, the basic building blocks of any programming language, like variables, constants, keywords, and of course the syntaxes for each and every one, and how we can declare a variable, how we can initialize a variable, what is meant by constants, what is reserved word, and what is the rules to assign a name for a variable or function or class and all those things, and what are branching and looping statements, how you can use, what are the different types of branching statements and what are the different types of looping statements and their syntaxes, and some programming programs you have written for these branching and looping statements in C. And of course, about arrays, you learn what is mean by array, how it is different from a normal variable, how you can access the elements from an array, how you can initialize, and how you can use these arrays in your program to store set of elements of same data type, and also about data types you learn in C language, what are the different types of data types, and how much size is allocated for each and every data type, and what is the range of each and every data type, and how can make use of them in our programs. Okay, all those things are covered in C language. And also the functions, what is mean by function, and what are the different types of categories of functions, how you can write the functions, what is the main concept of these functions, we learn in C language with programs. And here, when you are going to learn this C++, you need to know all these things, better to know all these things prior. Of course, if you are not learn this C language, you need some extra work or hard work to learn this C++, but this is not a complex or complicated subject. You can easily learn this subject. So with the knowledge of C, now we are going to step into our lecture. The first objective of this lecture is software crisis. What mean by software crisis? So of course we know what is meant by software. Software is a set of statements or some collection of programs. Of course, in turn, program is a collection of statements. So here, normally all the programming languages are used to develop software. So what is meant by software crisis? Normally, crisis means some difficulty. So here, software crisis is a term used in the early days of computing science for the difficulty of writing useful and efficient computer programs in the required time. That is, when we are going to write softwares, that is useful and efficient computer programs in a required time. That is, there is a some time bound. In the time bound, we need to write useful and efficient computer programs, that is softwares, which may cause some difficulty. That is called as software crisis. The software crisis was due to the rapid increases in computer power and the complexity of the problems that could now be tackled. That is, in the early days of the computers, normally there what is main objective of writing or developing a software is for developing simple softwares which save the time and not that much complicated when compared with nowadays softwares. So here the software crisis was due to the rapid increases in computer power. Basically in early days mainly the computer is invented for complex calculations. But now the computer is used in every place. So the power of the computer is increased and the complexity of the problems. And as it is mainly used for complex calculations, but now the input given to the computer is very complicated. That computer has to complete that particular complexity complex problem, and it has to solve. So here, as there is a rapid increase in computer power and the complexity of the problems, the software crisis was arise. Here, with the increase in the complexity of the software, many software problems arose because existing methods were inadequate. Is the methods which are prior or earlier, they are inadequate to the softwares to be developed now. So this is the main cause for the software crisis. The crisis manifests itself in several ways. That is here, if there is a software crisis, then it may cause to some problems. That is projects running over budget, projects running over time. That is here as we are facing some problems or difficulties at the time of writing the software or writing the complex programs that may cause over budget. Normally, for developing any particular software, the budget will be allocated prior only. But as the complexity of the program is increasing, obviously the budget allocated budget also be increased. And of course, projects running over time. They not they may not be completed within a time. It may require some more time. And software was very inefficient because day to day the softwares are updating and they are enhancing. So obviously that may very inefficient. Software was very inefficient and software was of low quality. If the software was inefficient, obviously its quality was low, and software often did not meet requirements. So, at the time of scratch, we are thinking about the main requirements of that particular software may not be meet at the end of the developing that particular software. And projects were unmanageable and so difficult to maintain. If the software is increasing to the complexity, so it is very hard to manage, unmanageable, and so difficult to maintain. Even the code may be very difficult to maintain, and software was never delivered. If you are facing all these problems, that is it is running over the budget and running over the time, and software was very inefficient and was of low quality and did not meet requirements and unmanageable and difficult to maintain. Obviously we will never deliver the software in time. So by this diagram you can get a clear idea about the software crisis. So day by day the demand of the software is increasing, the complexity of the software is increasing, and challenges or the competition is increasing. But here, if we are using the same workforce, same methods and same tools, then it may cause software crisis, right? Day by day, the demand of the software is increasing and the complexity of the software is increasing and the challenges are increasing because of the competitions. But if we are using the same workforce, that is same number of developers to develop that particular software in the same methods, conventional methods if we use, and the same conventional tools which are used for developing a earlier softwares. Even now, if we are using the same workforce, same methods, and same tools, it causes the software crisis. This is software crisis. That is the difficulties we face when writing a program is called as software crisis. And if that is the case, then what is the solution of software crisis? So here there are so many solutions for software crisis. One of them is software engineering. Software engineering is the application of engineering, because here we use one possible solution of software crisis is software engineering, because software engineering is a systematic, disciplined and quantifiable approach. That is, before getting into the actual software, here we follow some systematic approach and disciplined and quantifiable approach. We can quantify which software we are going to develop, okay, prior to the actual development of our software. So we can overcome the this particular software crisis. So one possible solution of software crisis is software engineering. Software engineering is nothing but an application of the engineering, and here software engineering is a systematic, disciplined and quantifiable approach. Now, what is object oriented programming? So up to now what we have seen, basically what is the topics, or what are the units in our subject, and what is the prerequisite for learning this particular subject, and after that what is the objective of this particular subject. And the first one is, in that particular subject, the first one is what is software crisis, because here the software crisis, that is it in that is it supports, or it arises evaluation of programming paradigms. So we discussed what is software crisis and what is the solution for software crisis. And the next topic is object oriented programming. So here we are going to learn OOPS through C++, object oriented programming system through C++. Using C++ language, programming language, we are going to learn OOPS. Okay, so this is basically popularly known as OOPS, object oriented programming system, and this is the new programming paradigm and playing an increasing role in software development, because till now, as we discussed, there is some software crisis day by day, because the complexity of the software is increasing, and so the the previously developed software programming languages are not enough to develop softwares. So that's why here we need to evaluate the previous programming languages. So here this OOPS plays an increasing role in software development. And why we need to go for new programming paradigm? As we discussed, there is a software crisis. Obviously, we need to go for new programming paradigms, because day to day we need to update our knowledge. As previously we are having only conventional teaching method, but now we need to opt these online classes also. Like that, previously we are having some conventional programming languages, but day to day, as the softwares are in the hardware and the complexity of software and hardware is increasing, we need to adopt new programming paradigms. Likewise, in programming languages also, we need to go for new programming paradigms, right? So, developments in hardware and software technology continue to be dynamic. Here, the software and hardware technologies are dynamically changing. So we need to go for new programming paradigms. And new tools and techniques are announced in quick succession. Okay, one after the another new tools and new technologies are coming to the market. We need to adopt all those knowledge to survive or to update our knowledge. Okay, so here also new tools and techniques are announced in quick succession. That's why we need to go for new program paradigms. And also continuous decline in hardware cost. That is, hardware cost is simply a drastically changing, that is declining, decreasing the cost of the hardware when you compare with previous hardware. Okay, I know I used a desktop system which is having only 40 GB hard drive, but now we are using a simple smartphone which is having around 64 GB with inbuilt processor, okay, not extendable drives, okay, memory cards like that. Here also at that time when we purchase that particular pieces, that cost may be very high when we compare with nowadays. So here the hardware cost is declined, decreasing, continuous decline in hardware cost, and also increase in software cost and complexity. And of course, the complexity of the software is very much increasing. That's why we need to go for new programming paradigm. And new programming approaches are being invented to reduce the cost and complexity of software. That's why we require these new programming approaches. The new programming approaches are being invented to reduce the cost and complexity of software. Software cost is in order to reduce the software cost and also the complexity of the software, we require new programming approaches. Okay, these are some reasons why we need to go for new programming paradigms. Right? Next, we'll go to evaluation of programming paradigms. So as we discussed earlier days, we are having some programming language. Later, we are invented some other programming languages, and now we are going to learn about C++. That is another type of programming paradigm. So here we are going to discuss about evaluation of programming paradigms. Mainly, these programming paradigms are categorized into four types. That is, first one is monolithic programming. Second one is procedural oriented programming. Third one is structured programming. And fourth one is object oriented programming. Till now, we have discussed object oriented programming. Why we need to go for this object oriented programming, right? Now, for that, what is monolith? So here, if you observe this monolithic programming, in this approach, the program consists of sequence of statements that modify data. So if you are able to see here the diagram, here this is the global data and it is having some set of statements, that is in this case 100 statements. All these statements are making use of only the global data. And here also if you observe in the sixth line, we are having some go to statement and 50. That means here simply the execution will jump from sixth line to 50th line. Okay. So in this approach, the program consists of sequence of statements that modify the data. It is having some 100 sequences of statements which state the global data. And all the statements of the program are global throughout the whole program. The program control is achieved through the use of jumps, that is go to statements only. How we can control the execution of the program? Using only go to statements. And in this approach, code is duplicated each time because there is no support for the function. That is, here if you observe, as we are having these 100 statements, and these 100 statements are using only the global data. That is, if the first statement is changed the global data, obviously it will affect the new data, or the new modified data will be accessed by second one, right? So here obviously the data will be changed continuously, right? And data is not fully protected as it can access from any portion of the program. So this approach is useful for designing small and simple programs only. This monolithic programming approach is useful for designing small and simple programs only. And the programming languages like assembly and basic are examples for monolithic programming. Here if you observe this monolithic, mono means one and lithic means related to stone. Okay, as the stone is one, here although it is having some 100 statements, all these statements are considered as single one, and all these can be accessed only the global data, that is also part of or shared by all the 100 statements. This is monolithic programming approach. Of course, if you observe this, no security, and even it is not having data types, right? This is monolithic approach. And second one is procedural programming approach. This approach is top-down approach. In this approach, a program is divided into functions that perform a specific task. That is, if you observe the previous one, as it is having some 100 statements, here the 100 statements are divided into some number of subprograms, and they share the global data. And this approach is called as top-down approach, because here mainly everything is accessed from the top only. That is the for example, if you observe the C program, C is a top-down. It follows the top-down approach. That is, although it is having some number of functions, those functions should be called in the main, and the main should be at the top. Okay, that approach is called as top-down approach. Data is global and all the functions can access the global data. Program flow control is achieved through function calls and go-to statements. Here, if you observe, we can call a particular function based on our requirement. And the 100 statements are divided into some number of subprograms. And of course, even we can use these go-to statements. Sorry. This approach avoids repetition of code, which is the main drawback of monolithic approach. As here the monolithic follows only sequential. For example, if we want to add two numbers at some line 50, okay, we have written the code, and at 60 or 70th line, again we want to add two numbers. Again here you need to write the code again. That can be omitted, that can be overcome in this procedure oriented approach. This approach avoids repetition of code, which is the main drawback of monolithic approach. And the basic drawback of procedural programming approach is that data is not secure, because data is global and can be accessed by any function. Like monolithic, here we are not at all providing any protection over the data. So again here this is the main drawback of uh, procedural programming approach, that is security over the data is the main drawback, and it also overcome the drawback of monolithic, that is repetition of code can be possible in procedural programming approach. is that data is not secure because data is global and can be accessed by any function. And this approach is mainly used for medium-sized applications. This procedure programming approach is used in mainly for medium-sized applications, and some examples are Fortran and COBOL. These are some programming examples for procedure programming approaches. And third one is structured programming approach. Here, the basic principle of structured programming approach is to divide a program in functions and modules like in previous one, that is procedure programming approach. Here also the code is divided into some number of functions or modules. The use of uh, the use of modules and functions makes the program more comprehensive. That is understandable. When we are dividing, that is in monolithic, we are having 100 statements, but now 100 statements are divided into some number of subprograms. So if you observe, if you compare with monolithic, this can be easily understandable because here, as we are having some number of modules, by understanding each and every single module, you can get an idea about the whole program here. But in this case, you need to remember sequentially. So that is the drawback of the drawback of monolith. The use of modules and functions makes the program more understandable. It helps to write cleaner code and helps to maintain control over each function. We are having control over each function. And also if you observe this diagram, here these subprograms are having some local data also. And the global data is shared among all these subprograms, and each and every subprogram is having its own local data. Sorry. It helps to write cleaner code and helps to maintain control over each function. This approach gives importance to functions rather than data. So here the structured programming approach emphasis on functions rather than data. That is, it gives preference to priority to the functions than the data. But of course, the data is also important. So this is the drawback of this structured programming approach. It focuses on the development of large software applications. The program examples for this type of structured programming approach is Pascal and C. Already we see already the programming language C is we are aware of programming language C. And fourth and last programming paradigm is object-oriented programming approach. The OOP approach came into existence to remove the drawback of conventional approaches. That is, the conventional approaches are the above three monolithic, procedural, and structural programming approaches. This OOP approach is mainly invented or existed to overcome the drawback of conventional approach. The basic principle of the OOP approach is to combine both data and functions. Here, the basic principle of object-oriented programming is, if you observe here, it is having some local data, these subprograms, and it is having some global data. So here the main principle or basic principle of the OOP approach is to combine both data and functions so that both can operate into a single unit. So here the global data can be accessed by any of these data, right? Here we are combining the data and the functions into a single unit. That is the main basic principle of OOP. This approach secures data only. That is, here as you observe previous one, it emphasis on functions rather than data. But here object-oriented programming emphasis on data rather than the procedure or functions. That is, it gives importance to the data. That is, it tries to protect the data. Nowadays, this approach is used mostly in applications. The programming languages C++ and Java follows this approach. Okay, if you observe this diagram is here we are having, that is object A, It is having data variables and member functions. That is, the data and functions are combined into a single unit and can be accessed using only the object A. And if you observe this object B, again it is having its own variables and member functions. And C, if you observe this object C, it is having its own data variables and member functions. They are combined into a single unit and accessed through only object C. That is, here the data and member functions which are under this object A can be accessed only object A, not through the member function of B or C, or not through object B or C. The data which is pertaining to this object A can be accessed only through the object A, right? So this is like this we are providing security over the data in object oriented programming. It emphasizes on data rather than the procedure. So these are the four different types of program paradigms. So these are the program paradigms. So responsive-oriented programming, already we discussed, we have seen the diagram, the code, main program and divided into some number of functions, right? Next, what are the limitations of procedure-oriented programming? So already we discussed all these things in previous document. Here, this POP, procedure-oriented programming, emphasis on algorithm or procedure rather than the data, whereas the object-oriented emphasis on data rather than the algorithm. Okay? And most of the functions share global data in POP. And of course, if number of functions are sharing the same global data, no data hiding. You cannot hide the data from other part of the program or other modules of the program. So no data hiding. If there is no data hiding, hence no security to the data. And code reusability is not possible in POP. These are the main drawbacks or limitations of POP. And difficult to write and understand. This is and one more drawback of POP, and employs top-down program design not suitable for modeling a real-world problem, because each and every time if we are going to model a real-world product, then based on requirements we have to change the model. So this POP is not suitable for modeling a real world problem. And software complexity cannot be easily managed. You cannot manage the software complexity using this POP. Next, evaluation of OOPS, object-oriented programming. OOPS was evolved to overcome the drawbacks of conventional programming methods. We already discussed this, so simply I go fast. It allows dividing a problem into number of entities called an object, like object A, object B and object C, as we have seen already. And OOPS treats data as a critical element in the program. Always it treats the data as a critical element, important one. It has to provide security over the data, right? Next, it does not allow the data to flow freely around the system. It will not allow. And it hides the data. That's why it provides the security over the data. So this is the same one. Organization of data and functions in OOPS. Object A, data functions, object B, data functions, and object C, data functions. And here object A, object B, or object A and object C can be communicated through only the functions. And the functions of this particular one can be possible. Next, features of object-oriented language. Emphasis is on, that is, previously we discussed in previous slides, we discussed the applications or evaluations of POP features. Now OOPS features. Emphasis on data rather than procedure. Both data and functions are combined into a single unit. And both data and functions are combined into a single unit. Data can't be accessed directly. These are the features of OOPS. Data is hidden and can't be accessed by external functions. Through member functions only, the data can be accessed. Programs are divided into elements known as objects. Objects may communicate with each other through member functions or functions only. These are the features. And new data and functions can be easily added. Follows bottom-up program paradigm. That is, it follows bottom-up program paradigm design, permits code reusability, and time will be saved. These are the features of object-oriented program. And also higher productivity. That is, here it produces higher productivity as we are using reusability concept and dividing the function in some number of modules. Okay, so it increase the productivity because it simply reduce the time and workforce. So it increase the productivity. Provides multiple instances of an object like object A, object B, and object C. We can create multi number of instances and provide security to the data and easy to write and understand a program. Easy upgradability from smaller to large systems. That is, we can enhance the software from smaller to larger by adding the required components. And user-defined data types can be created. Like structures and unions can be created in OOP. And objects are to classes as variables are to data types. That is, here the variables are we can create variables for the data types. Likewise, here objects can be created for the classes. Objects are to classes as variables are to data types. Data types ki ela aithe variables ala classes ki objects. Right? Next. And some languages that support OOPS is C++, Smalltalk, Java, and Simula. Now, applications of OOPS. First application is we use these OOPS in real-time systems. That is the system whose parameters change every time. Real-time system. That is output changes instantaneously. The output will be changed. For example, if you take this thermal plants, the temperature varies based on the water level and the pressure. Okay. So always the input will be changed so that the output also be changed. That is real-time systems. Of course, we are having hard real-time and soft real-time. And the second application is simulation and modeling. That is imitation of real-world productivity. Before developing a manufacturing bikes or mobiles, first they simulate or they create manufacture the models. And after, if the model is success, then only they will create actual products. Okay, manufacture actual products. That can be, these OOPS can be used in simulation and modeling. And next one is object oriented databases. These databases store objects instead of data such as real numbers and integers. Rather than data, it stores real numbers and integers. For that also OOPS will be used. And also the application of OOPS is hypertext and hypermedia. That is suitable for various media approaches. We use this one. And even this OOPS is used in neural networks. Refers to a network of biological neurons. Neural networks refers to a network of biological neurons consist of artificial neurons or nodes, and also used in artificial intelligence and expert systems. That is, this artificial intelligence is combination of both hypermedia and real-time systems, and also used in CAD/CAM, computer aided design and computer aided manufacture. That also in that also these OOPS will be used. And of course in multimedia applications we use these OOPS concepts. And GUI and CBTs, office automations, etc.